Hello everyone, I'm Uriel and this is my very first YouTube video. I've had a presence on Instagram with my artwork for 2 years now, and I thought it was about time to branch out. So I used the idea of the mood board challenge, and I'm using the one here by Miyoki Zena on Instagram. It just spoke to me. It was like, yeah, Victorian style, rainy, red, absolutely up my street. So I've gone with my default, which is full character design for the challenge, just trying to use as many of the elements as I can. There's like 8 different elements, and I think I've managed to use about 6 of them for this piece. So my usual aesthetic and is sort of character design, but I do portraits, and I like doing challenges. I've been doing the scroller box challenges since January, and I'm absolutely loving them. Well, most of them. And I've just finished Inktober. So yeah, I thought I've never tried a mood board challenge, and I thought I'm going to start my YouTube channel. So I'm going to start doing a different sort of challenge. I quite like this challenge because it gives you sort of elements to use in a piece, and it's not so rigid as to what sort of piece you do, so long as you take inspiration from the mood board. With this one, I decided to do like some sort of superhero, steampunk, goth, Victorian character. There was an umbrella and like a masquerade mask in like gold. So that just seemed like it just sort of fit that style quite well. I went onto Google and I got a high-collared, long-sleeved, floor-length Victorian style gown image and just adapted it slightly. I wanted her to have a skirt, but a shorter one, so I've adapted the skirt to make it shorter and for it to flare out a little bit more. I'm using Canson XL marker paper that I bought while I was in the US in June. We don't often get the Canson papers over here unless you want to pay through the nose for it. So while I was over there, I sort of just ended up I went into Michael's and just bought $50 worth of paper. So you can just see there, I'm flipping the paper over. I'm not using a light box, I'm just using, it was enough just to use the white of the pad of paper just to get the initial sketch from the other side to show through. And up to now, the supplies I'm using have all come from scroller boxes. The pencil is a Pentel Orines mechanical pencil from September scroller box, and the ink pen that I'm using now is the Artline drawing system, a 02 in black, and that was in February's. I do tend to buy my own art supplies, so I do have other inking pens and other pencils and stuff, but for some reason these are the ones that just came to hand. I've got a drawer full in my desk, and I just went in. I needed a black fine liner, that was the first one to come to hand. I needed a pencil, that was the first one to come to hand. But I do like using, I actually prefer using the erasable coloured pencils, so like the Prismacolor colour erase pencils or the Pilot Colorino pencils, but they just went on the top of the pile. That was the thing that the Pentel mechanical pencil was. Usually when I'm creating things, I use alcohol markers and predominantly Copic markers. I used to have a full set of the Winsor & Newton Pro markers, but once I started getting the Copics, I decided that it was just they were just better because of the brush nib, I think, and that tended to be what I used them for. So the Pro markers, they were given to a friend's daughter who was starting art school last year. So now I have about 200 Copic sketch markers, and they are my babies. It's my go-to art medium now. I do watercolors and I do colored pencils, but watercolors just tend to take a long time, and I just like the speed of what alcohol markers give you. You can literally do a full rendered picture in an hour, depending on what the subject is. This one took me about 3 hours, stopping and starting. It wasn't a one sitting piece, just purely because I'm a full-time student and I work full-time hours as well, so it's just not practical to be able to sit down and do a full rendered drawing that takes about 3 hours all in one sitting. And it does get tiring as well, sitting in the same position for a long time. It gets tiring. Not to mention that now I have to sit in a slightly different position because I'm recording and I don't want my big fat head to come in shot, so I'm sort of like sitting up right much more. Yeah, these Copics, they're not an actual blending family. I know people say that because you can like buy Copics in blending families, you know, and I do think that that's very helpful, but when you're actually doing an illustration, it doesn't always help to have the perfect gradient from pink through to red. So I sort of did mix the blending families that I was using up. I sort of used a bright red for the gown, and then I used a red violet for giving it a bit of a mid-tone, and then the dark was like E79, I think, so it gave it like a bit more of a sort of like a patina look to it. I mean, the gown that I saw on Google was completely black, but I went with the red to try and make it match the mood board slightly more. But then I did add black tones to it so that it still kept that look, but when I did the black petticoat, it sort of, her whole outfit just spoke about either, it was like a riding outfit, even though it wasn't styled like one, it was coloured like one. So she sort of like reminded me of like the Canadian Mounted Police with the red jacket and the black trousers that they wear. So yeah, she sort of like reminded me of that a little bit. I was really pleased with the pose, except her legs seemed to be too long for her body. She seemed to have more of a Barbie doll sort of ratio as far as like her proportions. But I mean, it works. I really wish I'd have sort of thickened her out a little bit so she had a bit more of a figure, whereas she wasn't sort of so skinny looking. But I was really pleased with the pose. I wanted her to be sort of like the butler to turn around because the door's slammed open, and there she is standing there in the doorway after coming in from the driving rain. But yeah, so I was really quite pleased with the pose, and the hands I did for this were, they must be like the best hands I've ever drawn, and they're still not fantastic, but I really struggle with hands and feet, and so like most people, I think when they're artists they struggle with hands and feet. But I was really quite pleased with the hands and feet I did on this piece. I did debate about giving her coloured tights, but I've just gone for the skin tone on them. I think it just gives her a bit more of a superhero vibe. I mean, she's not meant to be a superhero, but with the mask and the pose and everything, I just thought, you know what, give her bare legs, make it a bit scandalous. So yeah, I usually when I'm drawing, I try and keep all the markers that I'm choosing in the little colour families that I'm using them for. So like the elements, like the bottom three there are the three that I'm using for skin tones, so I'm keeping all those together. The next three are the ones that I'm using for the red elements in the dress and the umbrella and stuff, so they stay in a little set together. And then the greys are the next, and then there's the browns that I used for the hair. So I sort of, and I quite like that I have like a limited colour palette, because if it was up to me, if I was drawing something, I would end up using virtually every crayon in the box. It would be a completely multicoloured picture, and I don't always think that that's a good thing. I think sometimes it's better to try and restrict your colour palette just to make the piece a bit more cohesive, because I've done pieces where I have used virtually every colour in the palette and it's just ended up just looking a mess because nothing goes together. Here I'm just colouring in the background like she's just walking in a doorway to some manor house. I wanted it to be like fairly dark because it's supposed to be like a really bad rainstorm outside, and I didn't really mind that it was streaky, but I did go over it again, as you can see there, and it's still stays a little streaky, but I decided that because I was going to use it to look like a rainy sky, it didn't really matter so much that it was a sort of blotchy mess, really. And I had planned on using the various inks just straight out the bottle, dotting them on the grey to give it a sort of like blotchy, rainy sky look. So the first lot I used is the colourless blender, and so that starts to sort of bleed a little bit more than I wanted it to, so I'm rushing in with a Q-tip to try and save the edges. But it does bleed a little bit, but I sort of do try and rescue most of it, and you can sort of like rescue it a little bit and then repair where you need to repair. The second various ink I was using was Warm Grey 2. To be honest, it would have just been as easy just to use the same twice. You can't really tell that there's a warm grey, and you can't really tell that it's a colourless blender. It just makes it just splotchy. So here I've just gone in with I used a Sakura Jelly Roll in gold and silver just to pick up the like little metallic-y buttons and the bits on the umbrella, and I'm using a Derwent Colour Soft pencil in white just to give softer highlights, and now I'm just going in with a Derwent paint pen in white just to pick up like the more leathery shiny material highlights. And because there wasn't much of a value difference in the character and the sky, because I went a little darker than I expected to on the background. So I usually give my characters like a white outline once it's finished, but you can probably see there that the pen dripped onto the umbrella, and I didn't notice this at all. I was too busy concentrating on where I needed to put the line work. So I do put my hand in it, and it smudges, and I was devastated. I was like, oh god, this is my first video and I've ruined it, and so close to the end as well. But then it does it again. I sort of managed to rescue it with a bit of tissue, and then I go over again with the Copics just to get rid of the white. That's what I found was quite good about that pen, because that came out of a Copic, out of a scroller box, and it's really opaque when you're trying to do white highlights. But the issue is it's like a Posca pen, so the nib goes in when you're trying to load it. So I think that's what had happened when I was doing the white outline. It had sort of like splattered. Here I'm just doing like a red carpet. There was a red carpet in like a manor house or like a church or something. I tried to keep it more of an orangey red rather than the deep red that I used for the gown, just to keep it separate. And here I'm going in with the paint pen again, just to where the edges have bled. I've just gone over, and it's so opaque that it just covers those little mistakes. Here I'm using a technique that I used before. It's the Sakura jelly roll in white, and I'm just dragging it over, not trying to get an even line. It's just to try and give the illusion of rain in the background. Yeah, and I really liked this technique, and it's not often that I get to use it, so I've only used it really once before in a piece. That was a drawing your own style challenge. But yeah, I really like doing this, and I think I did it too uniformly. I should have tried to space the lines differently, but I really quite liked it. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed my first YouTube video, and I'm hoping to do lots more. So thank you for watching. Please go check out my Instagram at Uriel Illustrations, and please like, comment and subscribe on this video.